I would like to welcome you back for the third and final installment of this three-part video series. My name is Lester Levitt, and I am a PhD student in the Public Administration program at Florida Atlantic University. What we talked about in video 1 was this sense of community. Remember, I'll refresh your memory about the 3D, 3C idea of Yesha. And the three-dimensional 3 C's that he added into that model was community, creation, and commerce. And so if you remember this slide from video 1, this is the idea of the community. This is the community that we have created in this virtual institution. So what do you do to augment the entire world? How do you bring them together? So that's what we're going to talk about. This complicated drawing here is, if you look at the left side, this is what we talked about in the sense of community. These are them stacked layers of cities. Remember, we're talking about 951 cities in 82 countries that all were simultaneously having protests on the weekend of November 12th and November 13th in 2011. So what we're going to talk about to augment the reality of this virtual institution, how we're going to create this virtual institution, we're going to talk about this part of the model here. So let's take a close look at that. What we have here is we have the training cohort. This is me. These square blocks, these represent flesh and bone individuals. So these are 18 professors. Let's just for simplicity's sake right now, let's just pretend there's 18 professors here that are each a specialist in teaching and training social entrepreneurs who have similar interests and passions and skills and talents. And here in the city cohort, we have the 18 individuals on each layer who work side by side in the community center. So if we're talking about a community center on MLK Boulevard, which I talked about in video 2 of this series, then you've got those 18 individuals who know each other. They're leaders in their community, and their area of specialization and their passion for social entrepreneurship matches these 18 professors. In between them, we have the virtual cohort. So this is where those people meet and interact with each other on a daily basis, just as if they went to work at a government center downtown in Washington, D.C. But this is a virtual reality institution, so we're talking about augmenting the experience for the virtual cohort, and we're also talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who are on Tahrir Square, and those individuals who were protesting in 951 cities in 82 countries. These are the individuals who are marginalized populations. They're the activists who are looking for somebody to take their message and do something with it and make it more effective. These are the dysfunctional social entrepreneurs here who are uneducated about how media works in the 21st century. They know what they want to do, they just don't know how to do it effectively. So this is the collective membership. And so what we want to do is we want to take the creativity, remember the second C from video 2, we want to take the creativity of these individuals and this virtual cohort here who go to work every day to represent these individuals and convert their protest narratives into governing narratives. That's what this part of the virtual institution will do, is actually take this media and watch for something to percolate to the top. Remember, we talked about creating the governing narratives out of the individual ideographs. These individuals here create the ideographs. These individuals here convert those ideographs into governing narratives and get them onto an agenda-setting process for policy making. So that's what this is all about. That's what we're trying to create. So how do you do that? Well, we use Second Life currently because it's an existing technology that is free. Which gives it no barrier to entry except for the technology necessary to run very, very complex software. But you can participate just with a $15 cell phone by taking a picture and uploading it. But where these people, the social entrepreneurs, the virtual cohort, where they go to work every day, they would have to have some kind of high-tech computer that has a very robust video card. Because what we've created on Second Life is we've created this idea of hubs and nodes. So I've designed a model here. This is just my brain going crazy about what would I create if there were no architectural limitations, which there aren't in Second Life. So I created this idea of a two-story node that would represent any inner city population who wanted to have it. So on this one floor you have the media individuals, and on the second floor you have the policy individuals. The policy group and the media group each have their own floor with 6 galleries. Remember, we're talking about 6 genres of artistic creativity, and we're talking about 6 policy making campaigns. So each floor has these 6 galleries, which is where you put up this media that is percolating to the top. The most talented individuals, the most compelling stories. But not just any story. Remember, we talked about in video 2, these stories have to be viable policy. They have to fit in that middle spectrum from 3 to 7 on the political spectrum. So what we do is, as social entrepreneurs, as the leaders, who are the 18 individuals at each node in each city, if you will, they percolate to the top each one of the genres of creativity. So on the top floor, we're talking about genres of artistic creativity. But on the bottom floor, we have the 6 policy campaigns. Now, these 6 policy campaigns, we're talking about policy change, progressive policy change, so that it is a policy that better serves marginalized and oppressed populations who can't get their message through by winning an election because, let's face it, they're minorities. And so they will never win a policy change at a ballot box. So how do you change the discourse, and how do you put together a new governing narrative for these individuals? Well, first you have to determine whether you're talking about a systemic gap or a policy gap. So the bottom galleries, the policy galleries, are divided in half. So if you're talking about a systemic gap, something that already is existing in good, there's already an existing good policy, but it's just not being enforced equally because people, let's face it, the hegemonic narrative does nothing to enforce a good policy if it does not serve the more powerful majority. And so if you have a good policy already, you just need to change the discourse so that people on the street actually embrace this good policy and will actually change their discourse among themselves, so that people who are marginalized and oppressed have their actual government represent their interests. But if you have a policy gap, then you also need to work at different angles. So here we're talking about altering the discourse, here we're talking about altering policy. So let's take, for example, gay rights. As a gay activist, we have a lot of systemic gaps. People who are following their religion, it's already against the law to marginalize gays. You can't fire them, you can't marginalize them based on housing, you can't deny them housing. So we have a systemic gap where people are still doing that through coded language. So we need to alter the discourse. We've been winning that battle for 25 years. The policy gap is gay marriage. So this is, I do that so that you can see how on this floor here, on this Living Diverse campaign, we talk about the systemic gap and we talk about the policy gap very differently. So I want you to understand that. So let's talk about the Belafonte Teccolsi Center in Miami, Florida. This is the nonprofit organization that is on MLK Boulevard that I've been working with for a couple of years now. So I went there and I drew out their floor plan and I took some pictures of their building. So what we can do with that is we can actually create next to, as a node, we can create their space here, and we can actually make their space in the virtual world look exactly like their buildings in the real world. And so in this way, when you get 16 cities, so remember the one example of video 1, we talked about 7 cities. We talked about Brooklyn, we talked about Detroit and Washington, D.C. and Atlanta and L.A. So each one of these individuals, to create and augment the reality of how these individuals work together, they would be working in their galleries, and they would be close enough to each other that they can just walk or teleport across to each other's galleries. And so in this way, it enhances the way that they're working together, and they're able to share what their social activists in each individual city is bringing to the table. And that once again, the most powerful and compelling stories that are ready for the agenda setting process, those individuals are able to display their work, and you can see what's working in Miami, you can see what's working in Los Angeles, and these individuals are all laid out together here on one hub within the virtual reality realm. So the Global Institution Hub, and when you talk about an entire region that is dedicated to the bringing together a policy, so let's talk about labor solidarity. If we're talking about labor solidarity in the United States, they might have an entire region, which means one core of a processor, dedicated entirely to their space, so that they would have 12 residences. This would be a social activity hub where people actually work together and meet each other in informal settings. You have gathering facilities where you can have and host up to 150 avatars in a single location for events. You'd have also much larger galleries, as seen here, so that what percolates to the top in the individual nodes now has this very, very prominent hub where mainstream media might be picking up the stories, and where other people would come and see it as a clearinghouse for the policies that are being aggressively pursued as ready for the agenda setting process. And the most compelling stories throughout the nation would come into these galleries here. And so this would be the way of augmenting the reality of how individuals at a national and an international level come together. The way to make these galleries more interactive, this illustration here, it's an idea where you point your cell phone at the image, and this image will actually activate on your cell phone a three-dimensional graphic. So this dragon, actually, when you put your phone at it, a hole appears in the television, appears to appear in the television, and this dragon comes out and it flies out and it looks like a three-dimensional image. So it can be very, very interactive, and also we're all familiar with these codes here where you can point your cell phone at it and it'll load a web page, or you can point your iPad to it. And so these images in these galleries can be very, very interactive at this point in time, and that's all with existing technology. The other thing which we would have on these major hubs is that's where the virtual university would be housed. Here I have a representation of a policy college and a media college and the technology galleries. And these are the residences that are attached. So these individuals who become the experts in technology, who teach social entrepreneurs how to use Second Life and how to navigate it. It has a very steep learning curve, I'll be honest with you. And so when you get somebody who's new, they need to enter these classes to find and understand the technology, and they need to enter the media college and the policy college, depending on where their passion is, so that they become effective in what they're doing as more powerful leaders, and so that they know what to do with this media and what to do with a systemic gap and a policy gap. So that's all going to be augmented. The other thing which we have on there is somebody who is totally, totally fresh. Comes onto the Second Life platform or onto the Open Simulator platform, which is a sister technology to that Linden Labs has created for private use, so that you don't have to worry about the greater Second Life community, is that you can put these tours on there. You can ride a hummingbird through a tour. It's basically a PowerPoint presentation that's very, very interactive. Depends on where the chair stops or where your walking tour stops and takes you. You allow the program to animate your avatar in whatever way you want to make it fun, and this animated tour will take you through the entire process. So you don't have to have the professor online all the time. These galleries are open, these hubs are open 24/7, so somebody can come on board and go through. These are 15 tours that I designed for the region, which I put together when I was developing the program. The other thing which I want to talk about, I've touched on it here, is that nowadays you can get a $15 cell phone and participate as a social entrepreneur. And you don't have to have the kind of technology that my husband and I have. We have, this is I call it the cockpit. This is my husband's cockpit. He has this video and audio equipment because he does virtual DJ. He's a virtual DJ in Second Life. I do the tours, and I make the interactive galleries. And so my computers, and that's we have 6 computers in our office, as well as iPads and iPhones. People don't need to have this. I have this because I expect to be a professor. I expect to be the one who will work in these brick and mortar MOXIE locations, these arts incubation centers. This is the kind of technology that those incubation centers would have as standard equipment, so that somebody who comes in with nothing more than a good idea has all of the tools necessary. So that's why I show this slide here, is because once we create this gateway into the virtual world, anybody will be able to participate, and the objective is to have even the most marginalized and poor individuals have all of those barriers removed so that their artistic creativity can blossom. And once again, so we've covered off 3D, 3C, community creation and commerce. And I hope you understand now the goal, the end goal of creating this augmented reality situation. And once again, if you have any questions, our webpage is moxie.com. All of the videos that you could ever want are linked there. The downloadable brochures will be there. And as well, you'll be able to do a lot of touring and seeing what my ideas are.